When it comes to the wildfires in California, the big story we're going to be talking about today is this low pressure system that's set to move in over the next few days. Now, this is going to have a large impact on all of our wildfire variables: temperature, winds, and humidity, the three most important things when trying to figure out how our fires will behave. I'm glad to say this low pressure system is also expected to bring some rain to California, and the forecast models are looking a little bit more confident today, so I will go into a rain forecast in just a few minutes here. Now, as always, if you're only interested in one of the fires, you can click down in the time bar below to go directly to the fire you want to hear about. With that being said, over the next few minutes, I'm going to dive into the most important factors that affect all our wildfires, so I recommend watching the next few minutes if you want to get a good idea of what's going on. So, clicking back here, let's take a look at this low pressure system that should be moving in around Saturday morning to Sunday morning, although we already are seeing some of its effects right now. You can tell that based on the satellite imagery, as a thick layer of clouds has moved over basically the entire state. And as I said earlier, we're also seeing the influence of this low pressure system on our three major variables that lead to wildfire growth and spread. The first of which is temperature. And if we go to the high temperatures for today, you can see we're in the 70s and 80s, which is still warm, but it's certainly not the triple-digit temperatures that we saw last week. If we go to Friday's highs, you can see that that cooling trend is going to continue. We're going to be still in the 70s and 80s, but maybe a few degrees lower, and then we really start to see the effects as that low pressure system really moves in, and we get into the 60s and 70s in some places. So temperature-wise, we're looking great over the next 3 days. It's about 20 to 25 degrees cooler than last week, and we're actually continuing to go down, possibly reaching the 60s and 70s on Saturday as that low pressure system moves in. Now, the other major factor that this low pressure system has brought in is some moist, humid air. I would say that over the last 5 days, the humidity has actually been the factor driving our wildfires more than anything else. Over all of California for the last 4 or 5 days, we were seeing humidity numbers in the low teens throughout both the daytime and nighttime hours. And when it's dry 24 hours a day, that can just lead to continual fire spread with no relief for firefighters. As you can see now, that low pressure system has brought in humid air that's about 90 to 100% in some places. I can't emphasize enough how important this is. We're seeing much calmer fire growth this morning, and I believe this is the main reason for that. I will point out, though, that as we get into Thursday afternoon, there is going to be a blob of dry air moving through California. I'm happy to say, though, this is going to be relatively short-lived as we start to see those great humidity numbers moving in the Thursday night to Friday morning hours. And if we actually go to when the bulk of the low pressure system hits on Saturday, we are going to get some great humidity numbers, 100%, possibly through all of California, especially where we have our fires like the August complex and the North complex here. This humidity is really going to help us out. Now, one thing that I would say is still somewhat of a factor with our fires has to do with wind gusts. If we go to this afternoon, you can see there are some wind gusts still around the North complex and the Glass Fire here. I'm happy to say the Creek and Sequoia look like there's some calmer winds today, so that will certainly help, along with the August complex up here. Those are the two areas that have been seeing the most rapid fire growth over the last few days, so it's good to see the winds actually staying calm throughout the day today in those areas. As we go to Friday, you can see the areas seeing the most winds are going to change. We're now going to be over the North complex and the Creek Fire, and then the more western areas appear to be calming down. Now, with all that being said, these winds aren't all that strong. That's going to be about 25 to 30 miles per hour, and this is looking at wind gusts. So the sustained winds are maybe 10 to 12 miles per hour, And I will remind you, last week when all our fires were blowing up, even some new fires starting, we had some hurricane force wind gusts up to 70 miles per hour. So while winds do still remain a factor, it's not nearly as bad as they were last week. One thing I will show though is as this storm system moves through at about 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. on Saturday, we are going to get some extreme wind gusts. But I'm not all that worried about this point in time. Even though there are some 40 mile per hour wind gusts over the North Complex, if we go to the humidity at this time, you can see we're at about 100%. So I don't really see this being a time when we could get rapid fire growth, even if those winds do come in, because there's going to be so much moisture in the air. The other thing that might be happening, I teased this earlier in the video, is that rain event. And with this one, all week long, I've been saying, I'm not going to go into the forecast for it yet. I don't trust a forecast more than 3 days out. And this rain event is a perfect example of why I have that rule. I'll remind you, earlier in the week, the forecast models were showing half an inch of rain to an inch of rain. People were saying it could be the end of wildfire season. And I was a little hesitant and skeptical on if that event would actually happen. And you can see that that's basically what's panning out. This area of large rain that you see here doesn't look like it's going to hit California. And then sometime around Saturday, as I just showed, from maybe 2 to 5, we are going to get some rain in the very northern parts of California. But that's about it. It's not going to be heavy rain, it's going to be short-lived, and it's only going to hit some select areas for a pretty short amount of time. If we actually look at some of the numbers with this, you can see it's only forecasted to hit very northern parts of California right now, and where it does hit, it's for the most part less than 0.1 inches. So overall, I would say rain-wise, this isn't going to help our fires all that much. We were hoping earlier in the week that we're going to get an inch of rain. It was just going to put the fires out. I wouldn't say that's going to happen. What I would say, though, is that this low pressure system still will have a very positive impact on all of our fires as the high temperatures continue to go down over the next few days and humidity continues to rise. That is going to have more of an impact on our fires, I believe, than the actual rain event. So while the rain certainly isn't as much as we would have liked, we're still going to see some great temperatures and great humidity when it comes to fire spread. So getting into the air quality forecast, you can see there is some unhealthy air over the Creek and Sequoia complex here, and also up here by the August complex. Looking at the forecast for today, this model is actually showing those unhealthy areas going away and us moving back into the mostly moderate range. Looking at the forecast for tomorrow, it says we're going to be in the moderate range over all of California. And this is why I don't totally trust what this air quality map is saying. The upper level winds, the ones that are responsible for moving that smoke out of the region, are extremely weak over the next 2 days. You can see, to put it in perspective, that is some stronger upper level winds. The blues and greens here are relatively weak, and that's what's going to be over California for the next 2 days. Now, even though our fires have calmed down and they're not producing as much smoke right now, we did get a lot of smoke yesterday. It was still warm, it was still dry. The August complex, the Creek Fire, and the Castle Fire were all producing a lot of smoke. And as we've seen over the last month, what happens when a lot of smoke is produced and then we get weak upper level winds is it allows that smoke to settle down to the surface, which is actually worse for us because then those particles are actually at breathing level, and that's when you get unhealthy air and particulates that you can breathe into your lungs. So when it comes to the air quality forecast, I wouldn't exactly trust it. As long as our upper level winds remain weak, I believe our air quality will remain poor. Now getting into our individual fires, the first two I want to talk about are the Castle Fire and the Creek Fire because these appear to be the most active right now. Now, looking at the Castle Fire, for whatever reason, it's not showing me the fire perimeter map. It should be right around this area, but it's actually kind of helpful because you can just see exactly where the hotspots are. And as you can see, there is a large amount of fire growth still occurring with the Castle Fire. So that's also why I don't really trust the air quality forecast. While this doesn't look as bad as yesterday, that's still a lot of fire growth and active fires. So we are still getting a lot of smoke that will move in over the valley. Now, when we get to the numbers for the Castle Fire, we're up to 162,000 acres, but we are at 65% containment. And I'm happy to say that with those cooling temperatures and that rising humidity, this fire will be calming down over the next few days. The big thing that's been leading to a lot of the growth with this one is that dry air. And as I showed earlier, that dry air appears to have moved out of the region, and we should see some calmer fire behavior over the next few days. Now, I'm hoping that's also true for the creek fire here, because this one just won't quit. For about over a month now, this has just continually kept burning and spreading, and you can see that while this western edge appears to have calmed down, this northern edge and this eastern finger are still extremely active. Now, one area that is looking good is this very northeastern section here, and I've pointed this out before, but that's because it's actually burned into where the Lions Fire burned in 2018. The reason that's important is because this fire burned out a lot of the vegetation, so you can see by the time the creek fire gets here, there's a lot less fuel for further fire growth. Pretty interesting graphic there that shows how the California ecosystem is supposed to work. Now, something I will point out here, the majority of the containment for this fire has been on that southern edge where we don't see all that much hot spots and active fire. On the northern edge, however, we're still mostly uncontained, and while weather conditions should be getting better over the next few days, I do still expect to see some continued growth with this one as fuels do remain critically dry. Now, looking at the Wharf S-Fire wildfire model that tells us how this fire might spread over the next few days, it pairs the fire below with the winds above, and for the most part, this model isn't predicting all that much growth over the next couple days. So that's great to see. In the past, we've had some 24-hour periods where this model just had it blowing up in the north or on this eastern finger here. And if we go back to the beginning, look at the fire perimeter, and then just forward 2 days, you can see it still has a little bit of growth, but not nearly as much as we've seen in the past. And I believe this model today because the conditions are looking good with this one. I don't expect there to be all that much growth, and certainly less than we've had for over the last few days. Now, when we get to the numbers for the creek fire, we're at 328,000 acres. Like I said, we haven't seen rapid growth with this one. It's just been incredibly steady for 3 weeks now, burning in those same areas just 24 hours a day. Now, the containment is at 50%, but like I said, majority of that is on that southern section, and the northern section is where we still have the fire. The good news is that the forecast is looking great. You can see we're in the 70s, and the temperatures should be trending down over the next few days. The thing that has been leading to the most spread for this, like with a lot of our fires, has been the dry air. In this area, it's been staying around 20%, 24 hours a day, and you can see that that humidity is finally going to be going up. I'm especially excited for tomorrow's forecast as we're going to be in the low 70s. I'm not expecting all that much wind gusts, and the low humidity is around 50%. So that's significantly going to help out because when the air is this moist at its lowest point, that means some of those finer fuels are going to be able to pick up some of that moisture and not be able to burn as easily. So overall, Creek and Castle Fire are some of our more active fires, but I believe the forecast is looking great over the next few days. Now, another fire that has been extremely active and continues to be active is the August complex here. This is the largest wildfire in the history of California, has passed the 1 million acre mark. And you can see there are numerous areas with this one that are still actively burning. And that's the reason I believe this fire has continued to burn so much, is that it's so large that it's hard to just focus all your resources on one area, especially when you get areas burning in the north, the northeast, the west, interior islands, and then also the south. It's hard to take your resources and just attack one area because it's so large and it's burning in numerous places. Now, I will say this one should be looking better over the next few days, as this area in particular is going to get some great coastal influence, reducing temperatures and raising our humidity. Now, I'll also point out the Zogg Fire here. This one appears to be completely out, so I'm not even going to forecast on it today because it's looking the exact same as my update yesterday. So getting back to the August complex, you can see 1,014,000 acres. That is just absolutely ridiculous, more than we typically see in an entire California wildfire season. And it is 60% contained, but the key areas where this fire is still burning are the areas that are still considered uncontained. This northern section here and this western section here, where we do still see a lot of active growth. Now, I was mentioning the resources, so let's go check out how we're doing in resources. We have 2,500 personnel, so there's a lot of people still on this fire. We've got 46 crews, 16 helicopters, 256 engines, 46 dozers, and 33 water tenders. So we do still have a lot of resources, and I'd say that's a good thing because it appears there's still a lot of work to be done. Now, I did mention, though, the weather forecast is looking honestly great over the next 3 days, so I'm expecting some of those active areas to calm down, especially as we move into Saturday. If we look at the wind gusts today, they're going to be possibly peaking around 21 miles per hour, which is, again, much less than we saw last week when we had 40 to 50 mile per hour gusts, and relatively calm overnight. Looking at tomorrow afternoon, still in that 20 to 25 mile per hour wind gust range. Not exactly great news, but it's certainly not extreme. So wind gust wise, I'd say we're looking pretty good, and we're also looking good temperature wise. If we go for the high to today, you can see we've finally moved down into the 70s, and then if we look at Friday, we're trending downward into the mid 70s, and then looking at Saturday, we're actually going to be getting up into the 60s. So that is great news there. Temperatures continue to fall, and honestly, even more important than temperatures is what's going to be happening with humidity, because the dry air has been what's drying out the vegetation in this area and really leading to a lot of the continued fire growth that we've seen. I will point out this afternoon we will continue to see humidities in the teens, so I do expect that growth to continue throughout the day today. Now, going into tomorrow afternoon, it's going to be still dry, but not as dry as we've seen in the past. What I am excited for, though, is Saturday. As that low pressure system moves in, we actually could be getting some rain in this area, and humidity is going to be extremely high into the maybe 80 to 100% range, which is exactly what we want to see and why I feel like the August complex is going to significantly calm down over the next 3 days. Now, the next fire I want to mention is the North complex here, and honestly, I'm hoping this is the last time I even have to forecast on it because it looks like it's just about done. We can see possibly 1 or 2 or 3 hotspots on the interior parts of this fire, but we're no longer seeing growth in this northern section that last week was jumping Highway 70 and being influenced by those triple-digit temperatures, low humidities, and strong winds. The forecast is looking good. The fire behavior is looking good. So overall, I would say the North complex is looking good. Now, when it comes to the numbers, we are at 318,000 acres, but we're at 88% containment. So exactly what we want to see here. And over the next 3 days, as conditions are looking good, I expect this containment number just to continue to rise. Now, just mentioned the forecast. Over the next 3 days, we're in the 70s, and it is trending downward. Now, the big thing, as with all our fires, that has been allowing some growth to continue is that dry air. And you can see that our humidity is way up from what it was last week when we were in the single digits. Now our lows are in the 30s and 40s, and we're actually seeing some decent recoveries in the nighttime hours. The reason that's important is during these nighttime hours when we're in the 50s, we have low wind gusts and high humidity, firefighters will be able to go in, put out those hot spots, and hopefully put this fire to bed. Now, the last fire I'll mention is the glass fire here. And once again, I'm hoping this is the last time I even have to mention it because it looks like it's completely out. You might think these yellow dots right here are active fire and hotspots, but that actually signifies what was burning 48 to 72 hours ago. And looking at this map, I can't find any active hotspots, so it appears the glass fire is out. Now, with that being said, don't take my word for it. There may still be some evacuations in place, because CAL FIRE will often have to do things like cut down dead trees and make the area safe again, so don't take my word for it. Check the link in the description for all the recent evacuations, but fire-wise, this one's looking great. Now, when it comes to the numbers, we're at 67,000 acres. This has been hovering around the same number for the last couple days here, and containment is already at 62%. That is rather significant because this fire started the 27th, and we already have 62% containment. Fire behavior looks like it's completely calmed down, so I would say the glass fire is looking great. Now, with that being said, if this, for whatever reason, does flare up again, I will obviously do another forecast on it, although I don't see that happening as our temperatures are going to be in the low to mid 70s over the next 3 days, and our other wildfire variables are looking good as well, and especially with the humidity. We might be getting to 100% humidity tonight, which will allow firefighters to get in and put out any hot spots and smoldering areas that may still be active. So when it comes to the glass fire, I'm hoping this is the last forecast as that fire is looking good. Now, when it comes to the wildfire season in general, it has been the worst season in recorded history. I'm actually thinking of doing a video just going over this entire season in general, but some of the key facts: we've had over 4 million acres burned, which is double the previous record. The August complex is the first fire in California history to go over 1 million acres, which is more than our seasonal average. And while conditions do seem very favorable for calming our fires over the next few days, the August complex and Creek Fire do still have a large amount of area that's actively burning, so we could still see the numbers with the August and Creek Fire continue to go up over the next couple of days. Now, overall, if you take nothing else from this video, the summary is this. Over the next 3 days, that low pressure system is going to be moving in. We're going to get temperatures on Saturday down into the 60s and 70s. Humidity could be rising to 90 to 100% during some select hours, and we might even get a little bit of rain with this. So overall, our fires are going to be looking good over the next 3 days. I don't believe there's really anything in the forecast to worry about at this point. Now, with that being said, forecast models change every single day, so I will continue to do these updates every single day. As always, if you're a member of CAL FIRE or the U.S. Forest Service, thank you for all the amazing work you do. And thank you also to San Jose State and Dr. Craig Clements for teaching me basically everything I know about wildfire. And if you or any of your friends or family have been affected by these fires, my thoughts and prayers go out to you, and thanks for watching.